We got a lot to talk about.
Go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month.
Okay.
That's abcmouse.com/radio. Sponsored by Age of Learning.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Listening to WCPT 820 right now, we know that you're someone with a social conscience who cares about our environment, our government, and our society. We're looking for the right person to tell our story to local businesses in the Chicago area. This is a part-time salary plus commission sales position. WCPT
10 seconds.
Proud to be Chicago's only progressive voice, and we strive to bring quality programming to our
And now we're
listeners.
ready.
Email your resume to jobs@WCPT820.com.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, summer, save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I hope you're someone's sweetheart today. And we can be all kinds of sweethearts. We can be romantic sweethearts, partnered sweethearts. We can be friend sweethearts. Everybody, I hope that you have a blessed and wonderful Valentine's Day. Somebody out there loves you, starting with God and then me. Love you, love you, love you. Everybody, did you see the Super Bowl last night? Thrilling until the very, very end. Literally the last play. That's when the LA Rams won. Congratulations to them, and congratulations to the Cincinnati Bengals for a thrilling game and to really 90s hip hop. My goodness, Dr. Dre put on quite the show, or produced quite the show, with Mary J. Blige, love her, and Eminem, who took a knee, along with several LA Rams players. You had Dr. Dre, you had Eminem, you had, shockingly, 50 Cent. It was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful from start to finish. Only 15 minutes. I'm like so many people. It should have been much longer. That would have been an even greater halftime show if we'd had more time. Hope that you had a wonderful time last night, everybody. We're going to be talking about Ukraine today. It seems that we are creeping ever closer to a conflict, to war. What do you think about that? What do you know about it? We got to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show. Got to talk about it today. And then we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl. Has the charge by Brian Flores of not price fixing, but game fixing, has that been lost on you? I mean, really, let's think about it, because this is like the Billionaire Boys Club. They are having big fun. You know, while a lot of these athletes are there, this is their shot to bring their families out of poverty, to bring them into some measure of prosperity. For the owners, this is a different kind of game. It's a different kind of game. And there was some daylight between the NFL and sports betting, gambling, a few years ago, but that changed a few years ago. I mean, like within the last 10 years. And so we got to talk about that today. Just, is that something that we missed? And what about these safe smoking kits? Senator Manchin teamed up with Senator Marco Rubio to ban the passing out of crack pipes. That is not what these safe smoking kits are about. Dr. Deborah Verholden and Dr. Shanita Knighton are going to talk to us about that and what we can do to mitigate, if not outright obliterate, drug addiction. We need to help people with that. Instead of sending them to prison, send them to treatment. You know, send poor people to treatment like you send wealthy people to treatment. How about that? So let's get right to it, everybody. Got a lot to talk about, plus some good news from Reverend Dr. Todd Geary. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, having picked up the mantle of Air America. That's what we used to be, but today we're WCPT and AM 950 radio. My brothers and sisters to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hey, Chad Larson and everybody up there. Let's get to some of these headlines. Chicago will have a high of 28 degrees above zero, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, snow showers and a high of 16 degrees. As I shared with you, the LA Rams 23, the Cincinnati Bengals 30. What a thrilling game. One on the last drive, everybody. Tremendous halftime show. But there was some other sports news yesterday. In the NBA, the Timberwolves were triumphant, 129-120 over the Pacers. And tonight, the Spurs will be here in Chicago playing the Bulls, everybody. So what about the 130,000 Russian troops now staged outside of Ukraine? Let's talk about that today, everybody. It seems that these peace talks have not been going well. And we have got to talk about why they're not going well. So let's get to some of these. Let's get to some good news because I think we need that today the after the Super Bowl, but now we're looking at Ukraine. We could be looking at war. Pastor Yeri, there is just a lot going on, and you are a veteran. Ooh, very quickly, what do you think about that? Do you think we've had an adequate explanation to why we'd be going into Ukraine?
Well, I don't think there would be a going into Ukraine. The way they've been spinning it is they're going to the furthest country east that is in NATO to present some support for Ukraine.
Even though we promised that we would not have eastward expansion, right, with NATO. So
Right.
we violated our agreement with them.
Yeah, so everybody's playing against interest. Commitments are subject to revision, and I think this is the dance before the music starts. And I think everybody's trying to figure out what can they get before the hand's finally forced. Everybody's saying that Russia's going to quote unquote invade, but nobody's really clear on what invade actually means, right? So. It'll be interesting to hear as you go on with your show, what are the perspectives that we're not getting in understanding what's actually going on there. Because remember, this goes back. This was an issue in the last administration that led to a conversation around impeachment.
And going back to 30 years, I mean, the fact is NATO promised not to expand eastward. And that is what they've been doing. And I think that's why I keep bringing it up, because we have thousands of troops who we are sending over there. And they have 130,000 troops that they have amassed on the border because they feel that NATO is encroaching upon them. But you know what? Let's get to some good news. I need that today from you, Pastor Todd Yeri. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to everybody.
No pressure. It's just Monday morning. Hey, it's just another Monday. Let's go ahead and get to it. Good morning, Chicago. Come on. Good morning, Twin Cities.
Good morning.
Happy St. Paul.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Get up. Yeah, all of that. And, there's a whole lot there. Just hold on for that one. But look, time to get up, get moving. Time to say I love me enough to get up, put my feet on this floor. It was 70 degrees on Saturday. Now my feet are freezing. What's going on? What's going on is you're alive. Get up, get moving. Fill your lungs. Take a deep breath of life. And appreciate that this is a day. This is the day. Go ahead and make it a great day because there is greatness in you. Let's get to talking about what's happening with some good news. Now, everybody watched, well, it feels like everybody watched the Super Bowl. And I think a lot of folks watched it for the halftime performance. Mm-hmm. And the halftime performance, and you just mentioned, was only 15 minutes. But it was probably the most powerful 15 minutes of a halftime show that we have seen in several Super Bowls. Dr. Dre just did the thing, and I think it was captivating from start to finish. Everybody in our household was sitting there watching it, just to be amazed at what we had lost in terms of the appreciation of the importance of hip-hop, cultural critique of what's going on in the larger space, 15 minutes. But he had his time, he had his opportunity, and he made the most of it. What am I saying there? The question is, if you were given the opportunity today, would you be ready to take it, and would you make the most out of it? Because part of maximizing the moment, making the most of every moment matters. Got to remember that, is that you have to prepare yourself in such a way that when the invitation, when the opportunity comes, you're ready to seize it and not necessarily criticize it because it doesn't come in the form or in the quantity that you're looking for. So here's the question for you. Are you ready? Are you ready to take advantage of what might come your way today? Are you ready to put the best of who you are in it today? One team won yesterday. One team lost. Both teams had to be ready. And if you ended up with the losing score, if you were the Bengals, what would you do to come back today? Are you resilient enough to bounce back, get in the frame of mind that says yesterday is now behind me? I've got to focus on the opportunity that's ahead of me so that I can take advantage of the opportunity that might come my way. You are ready for the moment, but you got to get in the mindset that if the opportunity comes, you're going to be ready and able, willing to seize it, because the moment is too important to miss. Now, here's what I want to say to you on Valentine's Day, because I can't finish good news on Valentine's Day and not say something about love. Love yourself today. Love yourself enough to be the best that you can be today. Love yourself enough to encourage yourself today. Love yourself enough to celebrate you today, even if yesterday didn't turn out the way you wanted. This is still your opportunity. And if your 15 minutes comes, you got to be ready. Seize the moment. Make the most out of it. And I promise you, you're on your way to doing some great things. And I can't wait to share and to celebrate all that's happening with you. Go make it a great day. Have a great week, Santita. Thanks a lot.
Amen to that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Everybody, you got to come back. Your team might not have won yesterday, and things just might not go your way, the way you want them to. How do you recover? My father often says that the ground is no place for a champ. It's the unvaccinated are being told that, the vaccinated are being told that you don't have to mask. If you're fully vaccinated, many people, they feel that they've gotten 2 shots and they're not getting any more. So people are coming up with their own definitions of what fully vaccinated means. I had someone tell me yesterday, they just got a shot, not the J&J, but they got 1 shot, so they feel that they're good. Okay, doctor, Dr. Verholden, I'm just telling you what I'm hearing out here with people. And they were all good. They're not getting boosted. They're not doing any more. Okay. But what about this, in California? They're saying that, you're going to be able to be unmasked as someone who is vaccinated, but the vaccinated must still wear masks. Now, my understanding is that the shots do not prevent infection. They do not they do not prevent transmission, but they do lessen your chances of developing the severe expression of COVID-19. Since that is what has been reported, and you have shared that with us, I thought the point was to prevent transmission, Dr. Verholden. And for us not to get sick and die.
Well, that is the point. And none of these Good Samaritan laws will ever work. I'm just telling you that right now. I literally was sort of grappling myself with getting this booster because I kind of got it earlier than I even wanted to get it. And
oh my word. What happened? Was that Dr. Verholden or is that Dr.
doing that? I'm trying to fix it here.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? As Dr. Verholden said, it is not, thank you, Devin. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. I thought we were supposed to be preventing transmission and illness and it seems that we're just changing the rules as we go along. What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, 773 763 9278. 773 763 9278. Tell me what you think about this, and what do you think about these safe smoking kits? It's very interesting that Senators Manchin and Rubio, a conservative Democrat and a conservative Republican, are coming together to prevent the passing out of pipes. They're saying that, the Biden administration is trying to pass out crack pipes to people um, who are addicted to crack. That is not what this Safe Smoking Act does. It does not do that, everybody. But somehow or another, they are about to get this piece of legislation through. And this is all coming out of this coronavirus act that is supposed to help with personal infrastructure, right? So $30 million was allocated to help us deal with drug addiction, which skyrocketed as we were locked away during the pandemic. A lot of people are really, really suffering. They're really struggling. So they found through other programs that if people don't share dirty needles, you can cut down on HIV, you can cut down on hepatitis, you can cut down on a whole lot of diseases that kill people or make them seriously ill. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Devin, do we have them back?
They've both been here. The phone just randomly started doing that. They never left.
No worries, no worries. Dr. Verhoeven? Yes.
Well,
Okay, didn't know, hon,
hello?
because we just heard the dial tone and I had to keep on going. You know how it is. But please
No, I
continue.
heard Dr. Deb. Dr. Deb was actively talking to you.
I heard,
Must not be picking up what I'm putting down today.
I heard none of it. Because I'm not going to talk over you.
Can you
Hello.
hear me now?
Now I can. I'm not going to talk over you
I
on
was
science.
brilliant too. It's a shame you people missed it. I was brilliant, absolutely.
No,
Brilliant.
you have 5 more minutes to be brilliant. So go, girl. But help me with this, because transmission, to me, I thought that was the key. And now I'm just, and people will say, I've been vaccinated, I've done my part. I'm like, you've done your part not to get sick yourself, not to not spread it to someone else. Would you put on your mask, please? Yes, I did say that to someone yesterday. So just put
Well,
it
the thing
on.
is, I don't think any of this is about, stopping transmission. This is all about people trying to, air quotes, get back to normal.
Okay.
I mean, that's just
You mean get back to work?
Because it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not. It looks like the vaccine actually doesn't provide any real level of, protection against, you getting infected. And so whether or not you're vaccinated, you need to be masked. If we're in, periods of high transmission or surges, or you're in, these crowded indoor spaces, people are just over it. They're just ready to get rid of the mask and get back to it, And so it's unfortunate, because I was looking back on something that I wrote very early on in the pandemic. It was a text thread that I was exchanging with a friend. I was in New York when this all first started. I was actually at a conference, and I was shocked because it was like March.
Yeah, it was March.
Second, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
And I had not really heard, and I heard something was going on in China. I wasn't really paying attention to that. I'm like over my eyeballs and opioid stuff at the time. And we were having this exchange, and he said, I just literally got the local paper. And I said, what? I said, how come this isn't being more widely advertised? So then I reached out to a couple colleagues, and they were like, oh, yeah, child, this is coming. I'm like, oh, wow. So I literally said to him, he said, how long do you think this is going to last? And I said, well, I think this is here now. And so you might want to be prepared for a couple months. Like a couple months. I said, but, it's like with anything. As long as we, do the kind of right mitigation stuff, we can probably stop this before it gets out of control. I was laughing so hard reflecting back and reading those messages, because we still don't do what we know to do. And then there's this myth that if you're vaccinated, you need to get back to life as normal. And while it's true, the vaccine does reduce severe symptoms, it reduces the risk for hospitalization and death, it doesn't reduce that risk down to zero, and it doesn't stop people from transmitting. And they estimate that about 50% of cases are asymptomatic carriers. So people are walking around mistaking their COVID symptoms for something else, not recognizing the symptoms or not having any real, sort of measurable symptoms at all. And so something like that, you really need those very basic primary prevention measures in place. Remember, this ain't SARS-CoV-1. Everybody that got SARS-CoV-1 got sick, and 10% of them died. Everybody got symptoms, everybody, and then 10% of them died. This isn't that. So this has nothing to do with the science. You're exactly right. I know you probably scratch your head when you see stuff like that. Like,
no, I don't. You know what?
You're good old.
Because you know what it is, and maybe it's
like in my house we sort of joke. I'll give you an epidemiology certificate out of all the work and the conversations we've had.
Don't give it to me.
Right on point.
You know what it is?
It doesn't make sense.
It's just
not based on science.
You know what it is? I've just been studying governments and systems and how power behaves just all of my life, just because I've been in that space. And when I saw them shut down Wuhan, China, which is a city of 10 to 11 million people, I said, ooh. And that was in December of 2019. I said, this is going to be a problem. At the same time, they were shutting down, remember, Italy. They shut down a few cities, and they shut down a fourth of the country, then they shut down half of the country, then they shut down the whole country. I said, wait a minute. They shut down an entire country? Ooh. And I started riding around. I always keep extra toilet tissue, all soap and things like that. I started collecting things. And bless my cab driver's heart, who we're going to bury next week, God rest his soul. I said, Mr. Olumala, you need to stock up. You need to stock up. My mother always says this. I said, in the moment she's talked about, it's here. And you need to have soup, because we might get locked in, because they were closing down. I mean, Wuhan, China is more dense than New York City, all 5 boroughs. That's our biggest city. I mean, they got $10 to $11 million in the city limits. I'm not saying in the super city, right? I mean, you have cities of 18, 20, 30 million people in the United States. They started shutting those places down. I said, oh, we got a problem. So, I guess I'm just trying to find out how to be safe. That's why I'm asking you all these questions. But you know what? We're going to get to this discussion we were having about drug addiction and what the Biden administration is seeking to do to help people with that. These safe smoking kits, I want to know what you're thinking about that, because Joe Manchin, who doesn't team up with Democrats on anything except obstruction, has teamed up with Marco Rubio on a bill to block government funds from being used to give out crack pipes. I mean, are you serious? I mean, that is not what this does. And you know what? I'm going to step out on a limb here, Drs. Knighton and Verholden. If they did, and it would stop someone from dying, and it would pull someone into treatment who's a crack addict, so be it. If you're going to take someone who does powder cocaine into treatment, then you get someone who does crack cocaine and put them into treatment. I'm so tired of the classism of drug use. When all of these white kids come into the black and brown neighborhoods to buy their drugs. I mean, really, what are we doing here? Do you want to eliminate drug use or not? Do you want to help people with their addictions and the issues that drive them to them? Do we want to do that or not? Oh, 773-763-9278. I'm going to ask the Drs. Verholden and Knighton about this when we get back on the other side of the break. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Deb, go on. Girl, I couldn't hear you if I'm talking over you. You know what I heard? I heard dial tone. And that was it. And then I heard nothing.
It's weird because we can hear each other. Me and Dr. Knighton could hear each other, but you couldn't hear us.
That's weird because I could see both of you on the line, but I couldn't hear you either. I sent an email out to our tech people, like, what the heck's going on, everyone? So I apologize for that, ladies.
That's okay. But yeah, no, Dr. Deb, like she said, she was talking. She was dropping some knowledge.
Boom. I'm like,
I was really joking about that, but
no. You always drop pearls. So I was like, what? So that's what you call stretching, which is why I sit up all night and read. So don't crack on me anymore, Dr. Deb and Dr. Verholden. Thank you, Dr. Verholden and Dr. Knighton.
No, I'm absolutely cracking on you because it can be a both and, not an either or.
No, you're right.
You can
you're
read
right.
and sleep.
No, you're right. Look, you know what?
To practice the same advice we're giving everybody else. We're gonna get you there.
You're right. This is something my father used to get on me about. in college. This is what really worried him. He was like, oh gosh. He said, I never thought I would tell a child to put the book down, but would you please? I was like,
I don't know how you do it. I can't function without sleep.
I
can't. The older I got too, the worse it got. I cannot go days and days on end, let alone years and years on end without sleep.
I felt
just
it.
Can't do it.
Yesterday. My brother had a Super Bowl party, and I sat on the sofa, and I looked up, and it was 5 hours later. I mean, and I was.
Oh wow! Well,
I was.
Your body
I mean,
needed it.
Seated, legs crossed, arms folded. Okay, in the same position.
The Super Bowl watched you.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Did you see the halftime show or no?
I recorded it, yes, because I had to go back.
Y'all had me crying like my parents was up there or something.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? But you know, it did make me a little sad. I remember Sylvia Robinson, who was really our parents' contemporary, and she had a big hit years in the 50s. She started Sugar Hill Records with the Sugar Hill Gang.
Oh, wow.
And I thought of Curtis Blow. I thought of so many of. I thought about Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. I thought about Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. Oh, I'm digging deep in the crates. I thought about all of these people who pioneered the genre. I mean, I remember I remember bumping into MC Hammer when he was a local act in Oakland, selling his tapes out of the back of his car.
60 seconds, everyone.
Because he
really
had
gobbling down memory lane today.
Oh yeah. But that's the foundation. But because I see, I'm proud of Dr. Dre because he and Jimmy Iovine have cut these big deals, and he's an extremely wealthy guy. But these are the people who laid the foundation, who laid the foundation, and who made rap what it is. And they're the ones who refused to use the N-word and who refused to call women out of their names. Stop that. Because Sylvia Robinson was a black woman who owned that company. So Rapper's Delight, that was her song. All of that. So I miss that. And I was really glad to see them. Really glad. I just want us to continue to acknowledge the bridges that got us across.
10 seconds.
Because these people pioneered it when they thought rap was passing fancy.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. At the top of the hour, we will be talking about Ukraine. What's going on with Ukraine? Why are the wheels of war churning forward? What's going on? And then what about Brian Flores has talked about race and racism in the NFL? Yes, but did you all kind of miss the piece about game fixing? I mean that's really big. We got to talk about that in the next hour. But right now we're talking about Joe Manchin, who does not team up with Democrats for anything or teams up against us on obstruction. But he teamed up with Marco Rubio, the Republican senator from Florida. And Val Demings is running against him, everybody. And she's looking for campaign support. Hello, Val Demings, the congresswoman from Florida. Check her out. Everybody, well, they introduced a bipartisan bill on Friday that would block federal funds from being used to buy and distribute tools used to take drugs like crack pipes and syringes. And this is just stunning because so many of these prominent people have children or loved ones who are drug addicted. And I don't know why you don't want to help somebody else's child or yourself. I'm not accusing these men of anything, but trust and believe. There's a lot of private pain in public life. A lot of folks have a lot of things going on, and I'm putting it right there. So when are we going to stop this, y'all? What? Dr. Deb, last week, you and Dr. Verholden were on here talking about this these safe smoking kits. And now we see that yet while you and I were talking, they had the Preventing Illicit Paraphernalia for Exchange Systems Act. It's called the PIPES Act, interestingly enough. What do you make of this? Was that you, Dr. Deb? Of course it
This
was.
is still like such a colossal waste of time. I'm so mad we're even still talking about this. But notice what happened is very conservative media put this message out. I'm telling you, none of this money might even go for safe smoking kits, or it doesn't even say that. It's not. The money is not to purchase crack pipes and masks and hand them out. It's to provide these very important and evidence-based harm reduction strategies in communities that can benefit from them, which is most communities across America. So the overemphasis on this piece about the crack pipes, which is not, again, explicitly in this, funding announcement, but safe smoking kits is. And so somebody took that, ran with it, and said crack pipes for racial equity on your tax dollars, because that got people all riled up. It got me riled up. And then I went and looked at the actual, it's called an FOA, the funding opportunity announcement. And I was like, that's not what this says. So the fact that they're still riding that horse and trying to beat it, and they're going to ride it all the way into town and grandstand and say, look at us, not on our watch. We will never let your tax dollars be spent that way. It's just more of the same. And the larger thing about them helping to fuel, what to me just feels like this stigma and racism is kind of disgusting. But that's not what this money is for. That's not how most people would plan on using it. The recipients of these awards will have $400,000 grants that they'll be able to deploy in their community, $400,000, up to $400,000 a year for 3 years, to deploy in their community to implement harm reduction strategies. We don't even need a law for this. Like, they could literally add a note in the funding opportunity, or let SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, which is the agency administering the funds. All right, if y'all want to give people the, rights to sterilize their works or their paraphernalia, whatever, that's fine, but you are not allowed explicitly to buy crack pipes with this money. This is just a big colossal waste of time. But it is fueling a narrative, and it is giving them some street cred on what they won't let the government do with your hard-earned tax dollars. And it doesn't reflect what's happening in reality anyway. And it's just disgusting.
It just, Dr. Knighton, talk to me. I mean, what do you make of this? I mean, you have a safe smoking act. I mean, they're trying to help people. I mean, we lost, according to even Joe Manchin and Marco Rubio said, we lost 101,000 Americans from April 2020 to April 2021. This pandemic, people take drugs for a whole lot of reasons. I mean, there was a lot of pain out here. A lot of people who had mental health issues self-medicate with drugs and with alcohol. A lot of things happen. And a lot of people had some real emotional crises. Being locked away, we were locked away for like more than a year, for almost 2 years.
No, I agree. I was going to say, I don't think things are done in a way to communicate to the public clearly. And when I say communicate clearly, right, so you do, I agree with what Dr. Deb said, bringing up the whole fact of equity, right? So whether we're talking about cocaine or crack, whether we're talking about wet or something else, or, somebody doing Molly, it's still drugs, okay? And it's like at the end of the day, we start thinking about equity when we start saying, oh, well, yeah, we're going to, work on prevention for someone that does cocaine, which would be typically a higher income individual versus somebody that may resort to crack because they don't have the money to buy the cocaine, right? So the thing is when you start pointing out, oh, well, we'll give this, but we won't give this, it's a completely different situation. Oh, heroin. Oh, we'll actually do the syringe exchange program, but we won't provide the pipe. At the end of the day, people are suffering, and we all know that all of this stuff can lead to overdose. The part that's not being communicated clearly is what happens on the other end of that. What happens with the amount of money that's spent when emergency medical services are called, and emergency medical services are dealing with overdoses and can't deal with somebody's kid that may be suffering from poisoning. What happens when that child gets a hold of these materials, right, and is then suffering as a result of that? Because they're now harmed. What happens with the utilization of hospital services? So we complain about that, and we're seeing that right now with COVID, but we're not even talking about the utilization of resources of individuals, that come into emergencies around drug use. What happens when somebody is unsafe on the road because they have partook in these drugs? What happens, as they mentioned, with infectious disease, when someone is using the same syringes, someone is using the same glass, and they're cutting their lips, and everyone is sharing the same information, and now we got to worry about HIV and AIDS, which has skyrocketed, by the way, recently. So it's like, I think that the problem is it's not being communicated how the dollars translate into the percentage of increase of drug use that we have seen during this pandemic, and what it is doing to our healthcare system, what it is doing to our families. People don't think about how that is quantified by how many families are broken up, how many children are ending up as a part of the system, how many children are being ruined because they're witnessing their parents either overdose or dead. So I just don't think that I don't think logically, I don't think ethically, and I don't think compassionately we have leaders that are able to understand that and communicate that it's bigger than just saying, oh, it's a crack pipe, and ban a crack pipe. There's people out here that's got loved ones that's trying to search and reach for any little bit of help they can. That means that they don't have to witness their loved ones' death.
Let me go to.
Doesn't even touch upon synthetics.
Absolutely. Let me go to Mama D. Mama D, what's on your mind today?
Well, hallelujah. Greetings to you.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Well, to you also. Yesterday was the 38th anniversary of my sister, Helen Richard, being shot in the heart. And
I'm so
the
sorry.
first CTA female driver ever slain in the line of duty.
So sorry.
Valentine's Day has a different meaning for me because she got a bullet in her heart on February 13th, Lincoln's birthday. And I think of that arrow going through that heart, and I just have a different mindset on that since that happened to my sister, Helen Richard. But anyway.
Well, I pray for healing for you and your family. I really do.
Well, 38 years later, he's pretty much healed. But
I'm just going to pray for it. I'm just going to pray for you with that. Your question or comment?
So well, I read that this was part of Joe Biden's executive order 13985 that he signed into law the day he took office for racial equity targeting underserved communities. So it's not for everybody. But when you consider that it was Joe Biden that authored that whole crack crime bill that mandated jail time for crack users, but you could get probation for powder that crack came from. So I think when you consider using $30 million for smoking care to reduce drug-related harm by adding a rubber mouthpiece to keep crack users from cutting their lips in case they're using a glass crack pipe. I think that that's a waste of funds, just like $450,000 given to people who broke into the country because they didn't have no family jails to keep their families together. And we don't have any family jails to keep our families together either. If you get arrested, you go one place for adults and the children go another place, and that's the way it's done in America. So I am just very disappointed in the Biden administration when they are using taxpayers' dollars to do things like this.
Okay.
Because how do you help a crack addict by saying, I'm going to make it more convenient for you to smoke crack?
Well, hold on.
Crack somebody in the
Well, hold on, because I want Dr. Sirholden and Dr. Knighton to respond to you before we go to the next caller, because you've said a lot, and I want them to at least address some of what you're saying. Dr. Knighton, Dr. Verholten, whoever wants to take a crack at this.
Yes, thank you so much for calling in. So I do just want to say that I am familiar with this document that you are speaking about, Executive Order 13985, and I just want to point out that it doesn't say anything in there about crack pipes. And the SAMHSA grant itself, which is the actual grant that highlights the fact that they want to have as a part of these drug reduction and prevention programs, it also does not specifically spell out crack pipes in the actual grant. So I just want to bring that up, that in the actual executive order itself, it does not mention anything about drugs when it comes to equity in that actual paperwork itself. It just talks about ways for which they would engage with the community, reach out to the community, understand the community, so that way we can advance issues around racial equity. And so I think that right there is something that I do just want to clear up from the beginning, because I do know that a lot of people have been given this misconception around what that means and how that looks. The other piece of it is, which is something that many don't have an understanding about, and that's the fact that it's not really just about handing out crack pipes and telling people to smoke more crack. It's about infection prevention as being one layer of it, and the other piece of it is during a lot of these exchange programs, there are also services and there are individuals that are there to support people if they do want to quit. So it's really not just coming in and it's a hub of saying like, oh, okay, come on, just get this so that way you can do more. It's also not an instance of where these individuals are handing out the drugs. If someone knows an addict, which I have addicts in my family, you know that they're going to get access to it, and if they want to do it, they're really going to do it. This is not a matter of encouraging use. It's a matter of making sure that, hey, if you are going to do it, at least have the safety measures opposed to using the same exact syringes or the same exact pipe that you would typically use, and you run the risk of getting infected. So it's not encouraging use, it's encouraging safe use, which is the difference. Because again, just as we know, we can try to encourage people to quit. Same way we struggle with food addiction, right? People are suffering with their waistline because they can't get the weight off. It's still an addiction. Food is an addiction. Mm-hmm. So we have to think about that when we're talking about individuals that are suffering from drug addiction. A lot of us have to think about how we struggle with food and understand that we're all in the same situation.
Chaparral, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
Dr. Verholten, Dr. Newton. Listen, I love Mama D, and she is my girlfriend, but I am so sick of us always be the one to cut off our nose to spite our face. The reality is that they have always underserved the Black and brown community when it comes to these type of benefits. And now we have some allocation to help our people in the midst of a pandemic. I get it. I do not care if they help to buy needles and crack pipes, because we are in a pandemic that actually spreads a virus that is airborne. So if I'm putting my lips on a pipe and then I pass it to you and you put your lips on the pipe and we both have COVID, now we are spreading it amongst each other, period. So if this is something that they can do to curtail the spread of this deadly disease, then do it. But we also have to be the ones who have to say it's okay to get some funding for our community, because when the opioid crisis hit white America, baby, they dropped billions in there, and those people are alive. When we have people on the south side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago, dropping dead every single day from heroin overdose, can't get no Narcan cans or nothing. Okay? And so we have to sit up here and say enough is enough. It is time that we get what we need for our community by any means necessary. That's all I got to say, Santita.
Well, mic drop on that, because when we see opioid addicts, we see them. Are you still there, Chaparral? We see them, doctors for Holden and Knighton. We see them on television, and they look like they are worse for the wear. God bless them. Many of them are missing teeth. Their complexions, they're very sallow. I mean, they look sick. They look like they have been in the throes of addiction. They do. But they're portrayed sympathetically. Number one, they're asked about this. They're seated for an interview. They're asked about their stories. How did you become an opioid addict? No one is blaming the Sackler family and big pharma who dumped all these drugs into these communities, poor white communities, to numb them out as they are getting black lung disease as they go under the ground, mining coal. Thank you, Joe Manchin, one of your companies. And they're giving their dignity, Dr. Verholden. They're giving their dignity. And money. And they are going to get money. They're going to get paid by these class action lawsuits. Dr. Verholden, help me. Help Chaparral. Help us.
Well, there's just so many different layers to this. And it really is still the thing that really burns me up because, again, I think the whole thing is like a sham. These are not people who actually, kind of care about behavioral health or drug treatment or equity. They see an opportunity to seize the moment to shore up that white conservative base, and they're going to seize it, and they're going to take it. And they're spreading a false narrative, and they're fueling this racism that undergirds all of it by even just pretending as if. Because, see, what people won't say is when you say crack, your mind automatically goes to black. You say crack and crack use, and you immediately start to think about black people, using crack and Lynn bias and all those things. When the majority of crack cocaine users have, and to this day, remains to be white. 60 to 70%. For the mathematicians out there, yes, that does mean that black people are overrepresented because we're not 30% of the population, but we are about 30% of the population of crack cocaine users. But the majority of people who smoke crack are white. But the majority of people who get adjudicated in the criminal justice system for crack cocaine-related offenses, 85% are black and Hispanic. But when you say crack, it just brings that up. And then we start to battle, I think, a little bit over the wrong things, whether or not you think it's morally right for, somebody to do drugs and if it's their own fault and their own moral failure and all that. We had the same conversation about basic prevention strategies like making condoms available to people.
Mm-hmm.
People had a problem with us making condoms available to, high school students or to sex workers. But at the same time, you don't want these preventable, it can be highly problematic sexually transmitted diseases in your community. So I just, urge people, just breathe because this is not what they're fighting for. That's not even really what this funding is about. It's not how it's going to be used. And if used properly, it will actually benefit some of the most underserved and in-need communities who've just been not only historically overlooked, because that would almost imply just not helped or not regarded well. I'm talking about communities where there was intentional divestment. Let's go back in history a little bit. These are the same communities that were redlined. See, people don't realize there is a right now modern day impact, a legacy effect of redlining. Redline communities have fewer trees, more unstable housing, more vacant housing. You find more cracked up sidewalks, no sidewalks. These were intentional divestment from communities, intentional acts committed by industry and by government to have these communities be as weak as possible. And so the notion and the thing Pearl is pointing to, it's time for us to get ours. And it's not just a black or brown thing, right? It is overrepresented in black and brown communities. But, the scale...
And poor white communities. That came out. That they dumped these opioids in these poor white communities to numb these poor white folks out, just to send them down in the coal mines and have them living in poverty. Just shame, shame, shame. I want to bring on Pam. Just stay right there before we go. Pam from the west side, the best side. What's on your mind, Pam? Happy Valentine's Day.
To you.
Thank you. Same to you, Santita. Happy Valentine's Day. And to the panel.
Thank you, sweetie. I have about 3 minutes, so you go.
Thank you. And let's all take a breath. First of all, we all know that addiction is an illness. So can we start with that premise? Because I know a lot of people want to call on these lines and they're so holier than thou and they're better than all the rest of the addicts out there. I get it. If you need to feel that, that's you. It's an illness. And we're looking at, Santita, a way to try to deal with the illness and the spread of COVID and other diseases. So I would hope that the Biden administration would do more messaging on this. Probably should have came well before the rollout. I'm not going to listen to Trump supporters on this issue. For me, that's problematic in itself. Is Rubio still buying into the big lie that the election was stolen?
But wait a minute, hold on. But let me just say this, Pam. There are a lot of Democrats who feel that these drug addicts should not be helped in this way. Now, I mean, this is a transpartisan issue because a lot of people have relatives who've been drug addicted and they've been hurt by them. I mean, I think we have to dig down deep on this. They're disappointed in their mothers and their fathers and their brothers and their sisters, and that plays into their feelings because we're not just talking about facts, we're talking about feelings, right? So I think that, it's not just a Trump thing. It's not just a Trump thing because Trump had his own issue, to be fair. His brother was a drug. No, let me just say this. His brother was a drug addict. And that's something he's avoided, and he has certain kind of feelings about that. So I think that we just need to look at the societal problem that we have in not being sympathetic to people. The last minute belongs to you, Pam, before we go to break.
Thank you. And when I call Santita, I'm not just spewing out information. These are Trump talking points, Republican talking points.
I got you, but I'm just saying Democrats are following them too, Pam. And I'm saying you got to call all these people out on this because, I mean, Trump will be gone in time. But it's a mindset, Pam.
I'm not hearing Democratic elected officials push out these.
Democrats come to me and say things that were so full of, they can be so unkind, Democrats and Republicans, about their loved, who will come and say to me, I'm just telling you, people who come to me and who have said publicly, who come on, Pam, we're not arguing. I'm just saying, I'm looking at my chat line from StreamYard, from all of these different streams, and they will say, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my husband, my children, they have been on drugs and they could help themselves. I'm just telling you what they're saying, Pam.
I understand, and you mentioned Trump and his family. Well, Trump saw his brother's addiction as a weakness.
He did.
It wasn't any.
People are saying the same thing, Pam.
Used it against him, and I just think that's what Republicans.
It's not just. I'm just.
We're going to differ on this.
No, and Pam, we do, because I'm saying I've heard Democrats. It's not. It's not even partisan. It's a human thing. That's all I'm trying to say, Pam. Right. Stay right here so you can talk to the. Stay right here so you can talk to the doctors during the break. We're going to be talking about Ukraine at the top of the hour. Stay right there, Pam. Stay there. I'm not engaging. I'm not trying to talk over you, okay? But I think this is a bipartisan issue. I really, really do, because it's not even a partisan issue. This is personal. Folks have drug addicts in their homes, and they feel all kinds of way about them.
Well, sure. And I live in a community, that's, plagued by that, and I see the response, sure.
Oh, let me tell you, and I grew up in a community that was upper middle class and / wealthy, and I saw it. I saw it everywhere, and I'm just saying, it's everywhere. These drug addicts. I went to college with kids who got hooked on crack.
But they don't even talk about the drugs that are made in college, right? They don't even talk about.
First of all, you don't even do drug raids at college, Pam.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's a class thing. Okay? No. Ain't nobody rolling up on a dorm while people... You can walk into the dorm and smell the reefer as you're walking in the door.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
Come
Let
on.
me ask you this, Santita. What about Now, it seems to me that the Democratic Party always gets the naming right. What about the name and the safer smoking?
I don't know. You know what?
I think they missed the mark with the name.
They missed the mark
know.
on Build Back Better, girl. They've missed the mark on so many things. I just don't get me
preview.
started on that. It just makes my heart, girl, go pitter patter. Come on.
But can I just clarify one thing? We're talking about one fraction of a sentence and a whole big funding opportunity coming out of one particular agency. This is by no means the emphasis of this bill. Like how these bills get created and then get operationalized and money gets pushed out through these agencies. Like I just can't drill down into people enough. This is conservative media picked up this one little teeny needle in the haystack, then distorted it to get everybody all up in arms. But this is not what this was about. This is not what that bill was about. It's not what the funding is primarily about. And they got exactly what they wanted. We're all talking about it and everybody's got a strong opinion and we're all up in arms. And then even insult to injury, with all the bills that we need passed for equity, they're going to pass a bill for this. They're going to make a policy for this. Like, what a ruse. It feels like that fan dance that they do in the Chinese art form where the woman is very beautiful and she's got the two big fans and she's always directing her hands, but you never actually see anything. You never, like, there's no substance to any of this.
To any of it. But let me address Lisa Gross real quick. I am Santita loves defending Republicans, putting down Democrats. No, I don't. Let me say this to you. I've been deep in politics all of my life. And I've been prepared. When I think about it, God has prepared me to be in this moment, on this air right now. I share with you things that I have seen that you will never see, that you won't see, because you can't get in the room. I've been in the room. And I want you to know that you have a bipartisan betrayal on your hands. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about power. And this is about you being denied your fair share of the American and world global pie. I don't care about anybody's party. I don't care. And they don't care about you. What you need to do, let me say this, is negotiate. Let me tell you something. You need to negotiate with whatever party is holding the reins of power and get what you need from them. Mic drop on that. And you need to do that, because let me tell you something. White people do that. We're the ones who go, oh, I love the Republicans and the Republicans love me. That was during slavery. Oh, I love the Democrats and Democrats love me. That was when we were trying to move past the Voting Rights Act. Ain't none of it true. This is about power.
Now I got a question, Santita.
Yes.
Right. So you're absolutely right. And I think that's the thing that I agree with you, that it's not about political affiliation, right? And I think we somehow get divided into, let's say, the black and the white, the Democratic versus Republican, the left versus the right. It's always that conversation. But I look and I ask people, okay, we need to be thinking about the issues that connect us. And when we think about the issues that connect us, right, the fact that obesity is an epidemic, why is it an epidemic? Why is it an underlying problem that causes the outcomes that it is with COVID? Why is it that drug addiction, is harming people? Like, regardless of what drug we're talking about the need for equity, right? And I'm still going to continue to bring up, none of these problems stop. So, I mean, I know we want to talk about, okay, well, this Republican or, this is Trump's fault. But these are also issues that could have been solved up under Barack's term. They could have been solved up under the Clintons. So I don't get into the political affiliation with it. But I do say that these are problems that are impacting everybody. And while people are thinking about the stuff that divides us, think about the stuff that hold us together. Why is no one questioning the fact that diacetylmorphine is heroin and diacetyl is in e-cigarettes, right?
How about that?
Okay
and wait a minute.
Literally, I want to curve people from one addiction to another.
When I had a smoking cessation specialist, hold on, I had a smoking cessation specialist on my old show from WVON. And she said, you know why it's so hard to get off of cigarettes? I said, why is that? She said, because they're more addictive than heroin. No, hold on, honey.
Sure.
That's corporations. No. And these corporations contribute to both parties, Pam. That's my only point. When you get up in a room,
can I make a point? Need to be
sure.
looking at.
Reverend won Michigan in 1988 and shocked the entire establishment. They had to stop the presses on Time and Newsweek
Back in 60
magazine
seconds, everyone.
and come up with a new cover, okay? Because this Negro just turned it all out. And they had powers that be, and they wanted to know simply, what do you want? He said, well, I want to eliminate poverty. I want to do this. Everybody should have a fair crack at the American dream. They looked at him like he was crazy, and it was a Democratic establishment, girl. And it was a Democratic establishment who stopped his campaign, stopped the momentum there, shut down our machines in Wisconsin and in Colorado. Oh yeah. Like they did to to Bernie 20 plus years later. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I understand. But for me, this is a different
10 seconds, everybody.
It's a different Republican Party under Trump. That's what makes it different.
It's a different nation. It's a different nation, Pam, because it's like we've gone back to the Civil War. Love you. Is Bryce here?
Yes.
Great.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, inheriting the mantle of Air America. That's who we used to be. Today we're WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. And tell me what you think about Ukraine. And then at the bottom of the hour, what about the Super Bowl? What about game fixing? That's what Brian Flores talked about too, but we've missed that piece. But what about Ukraine? Do you know why we're going in there? I mean, do you even know why we're there? I mean, it seems that these peace talks are breaking down, and I just want to know why. Because Ukrainians, I don't think they don't want us there. They're like, we can work this out, and let's talk about this. 773-763-9278. You can text us at that number as well. 773-763. WCPT, everybody. Chicago will have a high of 28 degrees, partly cloudy. And Minneapolis, St. Paul, 16 degrees above zero. Snow showers, everybody. The Super Bowl, what a show. Everybody's talking about that halftime show, and it was something. Even Eminem took a knee. Wow, along with some of the LA Rams, like Terrell Burgess and Nick Scott. But you saw Mary J. Blige. Of course, Dr. Dre pulled it all together. I mean, 50 Cent was out there. It was fantastic. And Snoop Dogg, all of it. It was just a show for the ages. Everybody loved it. And by the way, the LA Rams won over the Cincinnati Bengals in a thriller of a game, 23-31 on the last drive. Unbelievable, everybody. So let me know what you thought about the game as well. What did you think about the game as well? With the backdrop being these explosive charges leveled by Brian Flores, where will all of that go? Everybody, call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. The Ambassador Bridge, North America's busiest land border that connects Detroit, Michigan to Windsor, Ontario, Canada, reopened after a nearly week-long blockade by the Freedom Convoy truckers protesting Canada's new COVID-19 vaccination mandates. The bridge, which connects Detroit and Windsor, Ontario, is essential to the robust movement of goods between the United States and Canada. Police started arresting protesters involved in the blockade on Friday after a judge ordered them to leave. However, groups of demonstrators are still creating gridlock and choking businesses in other areas of the capital city of Ottawa. We're going to be following this story on the Santita Jackson Show. The U.S. is actively working for the release of an American citizen who was detained by the Taliban in Afghanistan in early December. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says at least 8 Westerners, including 1 American, have been arrested by the Taliban in Afghanistan during different incidents in the last 2 months. I thought we were out of there, everybody. So let's get to Ukraine, everybody. Urgent warnings of an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine intensified again this weekend, with some U.S. officials estimating the conflict could boil over as soon as this week. Now, President Putin and President Biden were on the phone together this weekend trying to work all of this out, but somehow or another, it just did not work out. They even brought Ukrainian President Zelensky in separate calls this weekend, telling both the U.S. That the U.S. would respond decisively, as they put it, to any Russian escalation. I had to bring this brilliant young man back from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Bryce Green, to talk about this. Of course, he's a student at Indiana University, but boy, some of the most brilliant analyses of this particular conflict that I've read from him. What you should really know about Ukraine, as we see 130,000 Russian troops amass at the border of Ukraine. This is one of Russia's border states, and I just want to know what we're looking at, why it seems that we're edging closer and closer to conflict, also known as war. Bryce Green, happy Valentine's Day to you, and welcome back to the show.
Very happy to be here, and happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
You were exactly right, talking about how for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe a month now, we've been hearing Biden administration officials repeatedly say that there is an imminent invasion in Ukraine. Like, Russia is about to invade Ukraine right now. And they've been saying that for weeks and weeks and weeks. But people on the ground, like Ukrainians, Russians, a lot of European countries have really pushed back on that. They've said, no, Biden, you need to cool it down. There's really no evidence of an imminent invasion. In fact, President Zelensky recently asked Joe Biden live on TV. He said, if there's any evidence of an imminent invasion, please share it with us because we don't have it. And something similar was said by Germany. They're like, we haven't seen any evidence. The only people who are saying there's a war coming are the UK and the US. And if you know your history books, well, that's the sort of thing that happened right before Iraq. The US and UK both claimed to have some secret evidence of Saddam's weapons of mass destruction program, and they wouldn't share it with the rest of the world. And then they called the rest of the world insane for not believing them. And so you really have to ask, like, why is the U.S. escalating this situation? Why is it that the U.S. is the one pouring weapons into an already heated region? Why are we making bellicose statements? Why are we trying to send more troops there? Why are we trying to mobilize NATO? And the reason, as it usually is, in my view, geopolitical contest. The U.S. wants to push up against Russia by expanding NATO to a country that's right on Russia's border. Now, if you're Russia, you see this and, well, you start to worry. I mean, the U.S. has a very, very violent history of escalating tensions in regions that are usually peaceful. They pour weapons into hotbed areas, making things sort of like a tinderbox. And so Russia doesn't want this. Ukraine is very hesitant about this. And the European countries, they don't want this. And so really all you have is the United States and Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken saying Russia's going to invade. In fact, we have evidence of a false flag attack that Russia will use as a pretext to invade. We've seen no evidence of that. We've seen nothing to suggest the sort. No one's asked the question whether or not Russia can even sustain an invasion. They have a lot of problems over there. Vladimir Putin's facing a lot of domestic challenges in Russia. And an invasion and an occupation of an entire country, that'll just add to their problems. But that seems to be something that no one wants to talk about.
We're talking with Bryce Green of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. And, Deborah Bostic wants to know, what is the source for your beliefs? I mean, where are you getting your information from? Because it's counter what we're hearing in corporate media, unless we watch Democracy Now! Or something like that. But where are you getting your information from? What shapes your perspective?
So the information coming out of Ukraine, there's actually a lot of information coming out of it. Even in mainstream press, they'll occasionally have like reports. The wire services, they have all these reports about what's going on. But right after they get published, they're taken and their key facts are either dropped or omitted in mainstream news reporting. Like you won't hear at all about the heavy influence of Nazis and neo-Nazis in the Ukraine right now.
Please explain that.
You don't hear
because no one talks about the fact that there are so many statues that give tribute to Nazis in the Ukraine and in that part of the world. Please explain.
Right. So in 2014, after the U.S. helped to overthrow the government, the protests that led to that overthrow were largely neo-Nazi far-right elements, Ukrainian nationalists. We support them because Ukrainian nationalism is very often anti-Russian, and we'll take all the anti-Russian sentiment we can get. So we helped empower these people. We helped arm them. We sent weapons to the Ukraine National Guard, and an official part of the Ukrainian National Guard is something called the Azov Battalion. It's about 1,000 strong, actively neo-Nazis. Like a lot of people like to throw around the term Nazi, neo-Nazis. Like, no, these guys are wearing like Nazi arm patches. They do open Hitler salutes. Some of them carry around swastikas. Like these are actual Nazis. And no one in the West wants to talk about it because it complicates the caricature of a country trying to implement democracy versus the Russian autocrats. That's an easy image for propagandized Americans to accept. But if you look closer and you take a look at all these Nazis on the ground, you start to ask, like, are we empowering the Nazis to fight against the Russians? And the U.S. has a long history of utilizing Nazis to fight communism, and now to fight the Russians. Your listeners should look up Operation Gladio, where we used far-right stay-behind units after World War II to wreak havoc all across Western and Eastern Europe. We used them to stage terrorist attacks, blame them on the communists, and then use that as a justification to get more involved. This is a classic from the U.S. playbook. And now U.S. media are actively supporting these Nazi groups. In fact, there was one station, I can't remember, I think it was an ABC affiliate, but they filmed this public training event where parts of the Ukraine military were training civilians to handle, automatic weapons. And there was this famous picture floating around of this grandma holding like an AK-47 and saying like, well, you would want to defend your country too. Your mother would do the same thing. It later came out that this was an event organized by the Azov Battalion, by a neo-Nazi group. And of course, even the TV coverage, it had pictures of those Nazi patches on the arms that I was talking about. So in effect, the United States media was boosting a Nazi propaganda event. That's insane to me. And if you want even more proof that the United States has no compunctions about supporting Nazis, and we'll do it actively, just go back to the UN vote of late last year. The UN had a resolution that would condemn Nazism, condemn glorification of Nazism, condemn Nazi iconography, all of that stuff. The whole UN, everyone who voted in favor of that resolution. Nazism is bad, except two countries, the United States and Ukraine. The United States and Ukraine voted against a resolution condemning Nazism because, maybe it would implicate them in what they're doing in Ukraine right now, which is supporting far-right, literal neo-Nazis in support of their geopolitical goals. It's really astounding.
We're talking with Bryce Green of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. He has He has an overview of the situation in Ukraine that you really must read. What you should really know about Ukraine, as we're watching 130,000 Russian troops staged on the border of Ukraine, as we're watching Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, uh, go out and do a whistle stop tour of all of Europe to hold more talks with world leaders to prevent a conflict with Ukraine, NATO and Ukraine. I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. Lisa, why don't you call in? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You say for there's nothing Biden can do right, and you feel that Biden is trying to get ahead so that he will not be caught flat-footed. Why don't you respond to Lisa before we go to the callers?
I'm sorry, Lisa said that.
We don't know what intelligence basically that Biden has. I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying, Lisa. That's why I'd like you to call in, but because writing it is kind of can be tough. But she says that Biden is getting ahead of this, so he won't be caught flat-footed, and she supports what he's doing.
Well, getting ahead of what exactly? This situation started way back in 2014 when the United States helped to overthrow the Ukrainian government to make it be more pro-Western. And Joe Biden was actually at the head of this in the Obama administration. This was Biden's task. Biden was the Ukraine guy. And, we've even seen that more recently with stuff about Hunter and Ukraine. But the idea that Biden is getting ahead of this by making claims that can't be substantiated by evidence and then refusing to give out evidence to the general public, that creates a situation of panic. And calling that getting ahead of something, I don't think that's very responsible. If he's getting ahead of anything, he's getting ahead of, or he's getting in the way of Ukraine working out its own problems. As a matter of fact, recently, Ukraine, I think this was 2 days ago, Zelensky mentioned that he was considering declaring that Ukraine does not want to join NATO anymore because that might de-escalate tensions. Like Ukraine has declared that they might not want to join NATO just because of all these tensions surrounding it. That would seriously de-escalate the situation, but you don't hear any support from that in the Biden administration. All you hear is this talk of an imminent invasion and how we need to prepare and how we need to get all the Americans out of there. I don't see how this is helping the situation. I don't see how it's preparing anyone for anything good.
Let me go to.
I don't think that there's a good reason to think that.
I just and these are our husbands, wives, partners, children and friends who'd be going over there. I mean, I think we have skin in the game. That's why I'm trying to find out why the corporate media are cheerleaders for this. These are the people we love who'll get hurt, who'll get killed. I mean, really think about that. Chris from Wheaton. Chris, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning, Chris.
On this Monday.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Discussion. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Thank
I appreciate that because you're my only one, other than my mom.
All right.
This is, and I say this with the utmost respect, your panelist is very much, whether by choice or by accident, pretty much regurgitating Russian talking points. And I say this as a pacifist. I say this as an American progressive. It's not like Ukraine. It's not like America's been telling Ukraine to get into NATO. There's hundreds of years of history here where Ukrainian ethnic identity, national identity, language, and culture have been at varying times throughout history both engaged with and disengaged from the Russian Empire or Russian, what they perceive as Russian ethnic identity. When we talk about escalation, there's one person escalating the situation. That's Vladimir Putin, who poisons and kills his least favorite journalist. And he is genuinely, in my humble opinion, a sociopath, a dictator, and authoritarian leader in the world. None of this can justify America going to war. God knows. But if a country hits you up, and here's Joe Biden, and they say, "Hey, dude, we need some Stinger missiles. We need some stuff because Russia's about to jump in it." I'm not sure where this level of blaming America for this yes, there's all kinds of like interference over the years. So it's not to say that America hasn't been involved in every country on the planet, messing around and playing games. But I have to say, there's a lot of heavy-handed Russian propaganda being spouted forth, and I take issue with it as someone who knows plenty of Ukrainians and plenty of Russians in America and abroad. I take issue with this because the way this is being framed is not correct. Russian troops are surrounding the country and pretty much.
Well, but you know what's interesting, Chris? You know, the people who come to the United States from all parts of the world tend to be part of the right wing in their countries, which is interesting.
That's so true.
Well, I mean, and so we have to be very careful because I'm not part of the right wing in mine. So I'm always looking at them and going, And, you know, my grandmother was a migrant worker. May she rest in peace. She chopped sugar cane and picked beans in Cuba and throughout the Caribbean, but she spent a lot of time in Cuba in her youth. And she was someone who, my grandfather was a military man. She was a deeply conservative woman. Like many Black people are socially extremely conservative. And she wouldn't talk about her youth much because it was very painful for her. She was orphaned at 11. She had a first child at 14. She had a tough time. She said, people say a lot of things, but she did say this. She said, people say a lot of things about Castro, but you know what? Before Castro, people like me were little more than slaves there. Now, my father's mother and my mother's mother looked very different, you know. My mother's mother, very dark-skinned, very Negroid-looking woman. So she didn't have the options, the social options. So when she said that, it kind of was like a dagger in my heart, Chris, because to think of my grandmother just working her way through the Caribbean and through South Florida, trying to make a way and pull her life together, being motherless and fatherless, it was like, wow. So I would like I have a couple of minutes here. I want Bryce to respond to you, just because you've given him a lot, and I think that you do need to be responded to. 2 minutes, Bryce, they are yours.
Right. So to this question of me regurgitating Russian propaganda, I mean, I take offense to that mostly because I've presented facts, and regardless of who uses them as a talking point, they're true, and they need to be taken into account. Regardless of whether or not Vladimir Putin is saying something similar or Russian media might say something similar, these are important facts that need to be discussed in the West. As to the question of Vladimir Putin being, an autocratic dictator, I mean, I have no love for Putin or Putin's Russia. I don't think that it's a good system at all. But to claim that Vladimir Putin might be like the worst dictator in the world, Russia is dangerous. Russia wants to expand the Russian empire. I think it would behoove us to take a look at American policy over the last 20 years and then look at Russia over the last 20 years. Like, when was the last time Russia invaded a country on false pretexts and killed millions of people? The U.S. did that in Afghanistan, in Iraq. We've done that plenty of times. We destroyed Libya. We flooded weapons in Syria. We funded radical Islamic terrorists in Syria. Vladimir Putin's done nothing like that. So if you're comparing records, I think the United States record is far worse than Vladimir Putin. And to your question about Putin's escalation, I don't deny for a second that Vladimir Putin definitely escalated the situation by placing Russian troops on around the border. That's definitely a provocative action. But as I always say, I'm an American, and what I choose to devote my time to is looking at how my government can make things better and criticizing when they make things worse. None of my criticisms about Vladimir Putin will affect anything, but my criticisms of Joe Biden and his administration and the American empire, they have, even if it's modest, they have an effect. We do live in a system where voices can be reflected upward, and I can be heard.
I want you to stay right here, because a lot of people are saying, and they could be trolling, Russian talking points. And it's amazing to me, in a society that's supposed to value free speech and free thought, we don't do that. If someone counters a narrative, we label them Russian talking points. We label them anti-this, anti-that. We need to take a look at ourselves, everybody. Got to be real careful. Be careful. Because the way we are slamming each other and shutting down free speech and free thought, that's not going to be good for America. That's not the America that we say that we want. Or is it the America that you want? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Bryce?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to give you the opportunity to speak because I'm getting so many calls about this, and I want you to be able to speak to this. I really do. I don't want to leave you hanging, so to speak.
No, I'd be happy to. I mean, there a lot of people will, use the Russian talking point thing to shut down any discussion. But like I said, it doesn't matter who's using it as a talking point. These are points that need to be discussed. They need to be addressed, and they need to be known by the American public.
Well, remember, Dr. King was a communist, and even President Reagan said that he was subject to communist influences when he was signing his birthday bill into law. So here we go.
It's like after this whole RussiaGate thing, a lot of people will be quick to label people like Russian assets or useful idiots or like Russian bots or things like that, and it's really just turned people's brains off. I think it's made justifying the actions of American empire a lot easier when you have a boogeyman. Even in 1984, it was like we're constantly at war with Eurasia. You need an enemy, and right now Russia and China are pretty much serving that role.
Well, I want to hear from you all, everybody, because it's, these are just facts. I'm simply asking why we're going. And I have the right to be critical of President Biden. He's our president. Just as my mother is critical of me all day long. I can't leave the house. I can't not leave her presence without her telling me something that I need to do better or something that she felt was wrong. And even if I disagree with her, it makes me think and it makes me better. You've got to be able to criticize and absorb criticism. I mean, otherwise you're not going to grow.
Sending Reverend Yuri, Attorney CK, Reverend Hall, and Chaparral through.
Okay, Chaparral, we're going to run through your pieces, but I have to CK and Reverend Hall and Reverend Yuri. How are you, Attorney Hoffler?
Good morning, Santita. Good morning, everyone.
We had a very hot segment with Bryce Green, who's from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting.
Everyone.
And I've got to let him speak to a couple of his questioners and critics when we get to the other side before we get to you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll call you a little bit later today.
Okay.
All righty. After the show.
Okay. I'm right here.
Okay. All right.
Oh, okay. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
10 seconds, everyone.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, talking about Ukraine and the Super Bowl. We're kind of doing I guess what they call a mashup here, but Bryce Green has been taking a lot of calls from you, and I want you all to be able to give your questions, ask him your questions, or give him your comments. And call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. And I want to hear your thoughts about the Super Bowl from the, oh my goodness, from the halftime show to, I mean, really, has it been lost on you? Brian Flores did say that, in addition to racism and all of that, he said, there's game fixing. Ow. Has anyone heard that? I mean, I was like, wow, we kind of glossed over that. So we got to talk about that today before we get back into it with Bryce Green and attorney C.K. Hoffler. And that's right. And you'll be wearing your legal hat, Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, Esquire, and Reverend Will Hall. Brilliant, each one of you. Let me go to you, Chaparral. I hope you had a great Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes, we did, Santita. We had a lot of orders that we filled, and we had a great halftime show party at my house.
Fantastic.
So listen, Santita, Celebrations by Us is still open for business. We're still taking your orders for your Cajun pasta, your mac and cheese, your smothered beef, your smothered chicken, your smothered pork chops, as well as also our desserts, our peach cobbler, caramel cake, cookies, whatever it is that you need for your party needs. Don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We also helping to sponsor the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation Gala, and we are asking everyone to come out and support on March 3rd, and it's going to be at 6100 Blackstone at the Invisible Institute. So give us a call at 708-526-4546 to purchase your gala tickets. And this funding actually goes to support our programs, which include our back-to-school program as well as also our Christmas toy giveaway. So don't hesitate to support us. If you can't make it, sponsor a mother who has lost a child for this great event. Thank you so much, Santita.
And of course, the Courtney Copeland Foundation is named after her son, and it is in honor of him and the work that he did when he was here for this brief period, but he did a whole lot while he was here. Sending you much love, Chaparral. Let's get to you, Bryce Green. Bryce Green, let me go to Noel, who's been holding for a minute. Noel, what's on your mind?
Yes, good morning, Ms. Jackson, and happy Valentine's Day. How
And
you
to
doing?
you, too.
Okay, I wanted to disagree with your previous caller who said that people were kind of talking about what the Russian talking points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a couple of countries that border the western part of Russia, from Estonia to Latvia to Lithuania. Those countries are over there. Okay, Russia is not invading those countries. In 1992, the U.S. and Russia signed an agreement where Ukraine gave up all their nuclear weapons. At the time, they were the third largest country that owned weapons behind the U.S. and Russia. So they had security guarantees. Under that agreement, the U.S. will not expand NATO to the east, and Russia will not invade what's in Ukraine. So they signed that agreement. But now, both countries are trying to dishonor that agreement. The same thing happened in 2003. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program for security guarantees. In 2011, NATO troops went into Libya and bombed his convoy. Now we are asking North Korea to give up that nuclear program. Do you think they're going to give up that nuclear program after those kind of incidents? So you have to look at it from
another perspective. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the third nuclear state gave up that nuclear program. Look what it got him today. Gaddafi gave up a nuclear program. Look what it got him today. Now you want North Korea to give up that nuclear program. That doesn't make sense to them, and that wouldn't make sense to me either. So it's not a talking point. Those are facts.
Where are you from originally, Noel?
Okay. Yeah. So if
well, no, Noel, very quickly, because I need to get another caller in very quickly. But where are you from originally?
Okay, go ahead. I'm from Liberia, West Africa.
So that I know West. I know
Yeah.
Liberia well. We remember the Talberts they used to stay with us.
Yes.
Let me ask you, so how does that inform your perspective?
Because, that informs, so when someone is giving information, you have to look at that information with a critical eye. Who is giving that information and why?
Okay.
No one is saying, Vladimir Putin is a nice guy, he's a good guy. There are a lot of governments around the world that are not good government. But you can't go around destabilizing all the different regions. You have to be the adult in the room.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me go to. Is it Augie from Chicago?
Yeah.
How you doing,
Hey,
Augie?
Letitia, fine. I haven't spoken to you since your first show.
Bless
Happy
your heart.
Valentine's
Happy
Day.
Valentine's
Hey,
Day to you, Augie.
I want to. Oh, thanks a lot. I want to throw something in that military historians have been talking about, and they haven't. Yet no one has even mentioned it. Is that the question is, did Russia ever invade the United States? Of course not. But has the United States ever invaded Russia? In fact, 1918 and 1919, the United States declared an undeclared 2-year war on Russia and invaded on its west coast, Murmansk, and that was called the Polar Bear Expedition. And then it invaded on the east coast from the Pacific Ocean seashore, Vladivostok. So the United States wanted to take over Moscow because of what was going on with the Civil War. So this has been for over a century. Russians have been gotten, bad-mouthed and demonized since then. So why would they want to invade Russia? Because the rich guys over here in this country, in England, and in various other places, didn't like the idea of socialism and the labor unions forming a strong front and starting to have their rights made throughout the industrial complex. So that's something that's surprising. That a lot of military historians why we don't start at the beginning about the matter. But anyway, I'd like to say Happy Valentine's Day there.
Oh, bless your heart. Happy Valentine's Day to you, too. And it's wonderful hearing your voice.
Okay, and hope to speak to you again more and less than number of years.
All you have to do is call. All you have to do is call. I'd love to hear your voice. You know that.
Okay, love to hear yours too. And you and Mr. Gravely voice, the record repeater, Dr. Deborah Holding.
Yes.
We miss her too. So I'll say bye for now.
Bye, sweetie.
Have a nice Valentine's
Happy
Day.
Valentine's Day to you. Happy Valentine's Day to you. Your closing comment, Bryce? Oh, is Bryce still there? Oh, yes.
I fully agree that we need to look at the historical context of U.S. aggression towards Russia and the rest of the world. The last caller was exactly right. After World War I, the United States sent troops into Russia during their civil war. We sent something like 14,000 troops there, and so that set the tone for U.S.-Russia relations for the next 100 years. And right now we're seeing a sort of repeat of U.S. Involvement in other countries where they have no business being. And to your point about the wealthy people, the rich, the industrial complex who has a major hand in all of this, there was a report in Indies Times, I think last week. It was reporting on some of these earnings calls from Lockheed and Raytheon and other defense contractors, and they were ecstatic about this escalation in Ukraine. The $500 million in weapons that the U.S. is sending, well, that money's got to go somewhere, and the military-industrial complex is making money hand over fist in all this, and that's been the way of war for basically the entire U.S. history. Biden's foreign policy team, what they did in between the Obama and Biden years was they went out and got jobs, lobbying and advocating for the military-industrial complex. I think Tony Blinken, Michelle Flournoy, they all had Google as clients. They had Raytheon as clients. They were deeply involved with these people. Biden's Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he was on the board of Raytheon before being Secretary of Defense. So he was the guy selling weapons, and then now he's the guy buying weapons. And so if you really want to look at the economics behind America's war making, you need to look at the military-industrial complex. They're making a lot of money. Every time Biden or Ned Price or whoever comes out and says a war is imminent, well, their stock prices jump a little bit. They might get some more weapon sales. It makes their influence a lot more. And you need to look at U.S. history to see that they are really one of the main driving forces of U.S. foreign policy and U.S. behavior. So looking at the situation in a holistic, in its totality, I think it's very helpful to counter this narrative of Russia's bad, we have to do something, let's send in troops and guns, and let's let America do its thing. America doing its thing has been pretty much universally recognized as a disaster all around the world. Every so often they do a global poll to ask people, who do you think is the biggest threat to world peace? And what do people say? They don't say Iran, they don't say China, they don't say Russia. Almost universally, they'll say the United States. And that's because they know the history. They've lived it. They've lived in these countries that are being bombed. They've lived in these countries that are being put in IMF debt traps. They've lived in these countries that the U.S. has regime change designs on, and they don't like it. They don't
And
like
Dr.
being,
King didn't like it. And for all the people get teary-eyed every January 15th, and I'm going to bring it, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, and Reverend Will Hall, you all can jump in on this conversation too. I promise you, we're going to get back to game fixing in the NFL another day. We only have about 13 minutes left. 13 minutes left in this segment, and I want you all to have a piece of this. Everyone says they love Dr. King and he was just so wonderful. You don't even know what he talked about or what he stood for, but I get it. I'm not mad at you because, part of it's groupthink. We honor him now. So even though we hated him in real life, 75% of Americans did not approve of him. Okay. So there's that. But he said it broke his heart in the years leading up to his death that the greatest purveyor of violence in the world at that time and even today is the United States. Everybody, we're still on that course. And he said, if we continue on this path where we take money from programs of social uplift and put them in programs of war, we're going to not only kill our souls, we're going to kill the country. That's what's going to happen. But, they called him a communist too. I guess he had Russian talking points too. Yeah, that's what they said about him. That's what they said. So can we just really have an open discussion about this and not blindly follow anyone? You can support President Biden. I do. But am I an uncritical supporter? Absolutely not. We don't even do that in my family. We sit around the dining room table. CK, you have been there. Reverend Will Hall, you have been there. Attorney Hoffman, you've been there. Reverend Dr. Yeary. We have vigorous debates in the Jackson household. We just do. Nobody gets uncritical support. You get loving support. But the critique helps you to get better. It helps you to get better. CK, because we were talking about this, you got this brilliant young man from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting who's saying these are a lot of the historical elements that are creating this conflict. And we need to be mindful of them because it is your family members who will be the boots on the ground, everybody. You ought to be asking some questions before someone rolls up to your door in a uniform. Happen to anybody else.
Absolutely.
CK?
Well, this is every president has a war. This is not a new concept. Every president has a war because it's something that is part of the economic stimulation. But the impact that it has on those who have to serve, those brave men and women who fight in this country that have to be deployed, is devastating. And so as we venture into different conflicts for different reasons, the impact, the carnage is really on the men and women who serve bravely, honorably for this country. And many of them are Black and brown people, not just Black and brown people, but many of them are. And so I think that we just have to realize that every president has a war. And that is what's happening, in my humble impression. This is how the U.S. defines itself geopolitically and politically, internationally. Always has, always will.
And we can't afford it. We just can't afford it. Reverend Todd Yeary?
Well, I want to pick up on Madam Chair's point, and good morning to you and all your listeners as we come down to the last few minutes. The economic impact is key. Remember that when we look at GDP, there's a certain level of tolerance for the three things that Dr. King actually decried, right? Poverty, racism, and war. They all have an effect to the overall bottom line of the nation, and so there has to be a certain level of acceptability of all of those things if the economics of the nation are supposed to thrive for the entitlement class. For the rest of us, it is always a liability. And so when we consider, I heard Raytheon mentioned as one of the defense contractors. Bear in mind, Raytheon also provides a lot of the infrastructure for the national airspace system and the air traffic control system domestically. And so there's a link between militarism and commerce that cannot be understated, because when your economy is fragile, as this one is coming out of the pandemic, very often the reliance of presidents is to lean towards something that's going to create the production in spite of the cost, that's defense, to allow the economy to continue to have some mechanism by which it is able to be sustainable. And so we have to remember, when Dr. King was talking about war, he wasn't just talking about the fighting of war. He was actually talking about the economics of war, the economic exploitation of war that allows certain nations, certain peoples to be expendable, collateral damage within a range of acceptability that allows the U.S. capitalism in part of its as part of its imperialism to thrive.
Reverend Will Hall, your thoughts? I mean, because it is your generation who will actually be the boots on the ground and people just a little behind you.
Absolutely. One of the things that's very concerning and disheartening is that at the blink of an eye, $4 trillion is going to be exchanged with the possibility of war with Russia, $4 trillion, and that will include the cost to essentially pay for the health care of those troops that are on the ground. But when we go back and when we roll the dial back and look at 9/11, that war in which we unfortunately jumped into, that was an $8 trillion war that included not only close to 1 million people killed, 85 countries in shambles, and moreover 38 million people between Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and the Philippines. All of those spaces were impacted. And so one of the things, not only is the economics of war very unjust, right? What more could we do with $8 trillion in a country that still 2.8 million kids don't eat every single day? What more can we do with $8 trillion in our country, in which we're literally witnessing, especially in major or minor cities, it doesn't matter the size, close to an added cost of $2.8 billion a year related to mental health issues that come from people who don't get treated, right? Which includes crime spikes, which includes other dilapidations in society. And so war, it not only kills life, but it's a mismanagement of money that could be used to invest in human life. And so that's always the question, right? How are we investing in human life as a country? And when we go to war, not only are we turning our backs on our citizens to invest in the betterment of humanity here, but we're destroying innocent lives that have nothing to do with essentially the arguments between global leaders. And one of the things we must realize is that whenever we drop a bomb on a country, right, whenever we are killing innocent who have nothing to do with this, their family members are here in the United States. And what we must understand and look closely at is, in the next 10, 15 years, how will the policies and how will these wars that we are partaking in affect those who live in this country? And we will see possibly a reverse in which those family members will express their grievance by turning on others in this country. And so I think that we must ask the question, how much do we value human life as a nation? And time again, it is evident that when we go to war, we will rather choose to kill, destroy, dismantle families rather than building lives, investing in human capital to make this world a better place. And we have the resources to do so, to not only do it in America, but in other countries abroad. And so if I was in the Oval Office talking to President Biden, I would ask him, is this worth human life? Is this really worth the devaluing and the destruction of life away from our abroad, as well as what can we do to invest in life here? Because the war on the mind is real, right? Inner city poverty is real. That's a war that we have yet to tackle in our nation. And so those are the questions that I would ask. That's the question that a lot of my in my generation wonder, how can we invest to make life better rather than destroying life?
Well, you know, and I hear you, and I'm going to give you the last word, excuse me, Bryce, because oftentimes, sadly, when we get to the White House now, we're partying. We're not asking the questions that need to be asked. I hear you, everybody, and I'm so glad that you all have weighed in, even if you disagreed with me and the people I've impaneled. That's great. That's great. You know, I just want you to start thinking because, you know, we raise up Dr. King today, and everything that Dr. King warned us about is coming to fruition right now. I mean, he told us about militarism. He told us about racism. He told us about classism. He told us about all this stuff. He said, if you continue to invest in this war-making business that you have, you're going to kill the country. And that's what we don't have. We can give $700+ billion to the Pentagon that they did not ask for, Bryce. But you can't find me $1 billion to save some American public schools. You can't find it. You won't find it. And you need to get on the other side of the bombs that we drop. Yeah. You need to get on the other side of the invasions that we threaten. Get on that side of that. See, no one threatens to invade us here, at least not as far as we know. We have to get on the other side of that. Bryce, 2.5 minutes belong to you. Is Bryce still there?
It says he's there.
Oh, okay. He might have us on mute. But,
Oh,
okay,
can you hear me
Bryce.
now?
Well, now you got 2 minutes.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everyone's contributions, and I think you're exactly right. Martin Luther King, towards the end of his life, he did turn towards criticizing the U.S. militarism. He read an article about Vietnam and was deeply struck by the effects that that U.S. military has on the rest of the world. And it's sort of sickening that they built a monument to him while they're desecrating his memory by still flooding the world with weapons, dropping bombs all around the world. Like King didn't say anything. And this situation in Ukraine demonstrates perfectly the union between the militarized forces, the militarized economy that we have, and the politics that trickle down to the rest of us. Like I mentioned earlier, like this is driven in part by weapon sales. Like NATO, its entire existence is built on the backs of weapon sales and arms dealers. And the U.S. wants to expand that. They want to have missiles right at Russia's border. They want to have bases and troops and guns pointed at Russia. Russia doesn't want that. Why would they want that? If we had Russia storm into Mexico, try to set up bases, try to set up troops, put missiles there, we would be upset. We might even start moving troops towards the border. And so we have to understand it in that context, that we have to look at ourselves to see what we're doing wrong, to see how we can make the situation better. At the start of this crisis, Vladimir Putin was pretty clear. He says, I don't want the U.S. military this close to my border. If you guys would agree to keep NATO, keep the missiles, keep the bases away from us, then this whole thing could go away. Biden refuses to do that. In fact, in the media, it's called a, quote, non-starter. If de-escalating the situation is a non-starter for U.S. media and U.S. planners, then we're in bad shape. We have a long way to go to realizing King's dream of an equitable world with peace, where we're not murdering people, where we're not trying to dominate the world. We have a long way to go.
You know, everybody's a multipolar world. It's a multilateral world. We all, you know, God loves us all. That's what my Aunt Irene Ware, one of the legends in radio, would say to me. She said, you know, I was so upset about the invasion of Iraq. She said, remember, God loves Iraqis too. God loves each one of us. We're only 4.5% of the world, everybody. We have to learn how to live in it and live with people who are in it, not dominate people. You don't want to be dominated in your personal relationships, and you should not dominate people in institutional relationships. We need to learn to live with each other. More than that, we need to follow the commandment that God gave us. Let's love one another. Love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. You all are wonderful. Thank you for switching with me. Thank you for pivoting with me. But you know what? Bryce got everybody all upset today. Woo! And I just had to let him finish. Oh. You all can talk. We're on Facebook right now, but I wanted you to be able to complete your thoughts.
No, I can definitely stay. I mean, I definitely want to get people engaged. I now receive a lot of criticism of my piece. Some of it valid, some not. And like you said, if you're not willing to accept criticism, then you don't get better. And I love that people do want to engage with this thing, and I like that I'm able to expose people to a new way of thinking.
I am too. I mean, and really, Reverend Hall, are you still there? Or Reverend Yuri, Attorney Hoffler? I only have a couple minutes. Does anyone else?
Absolutely. I'm
still here. I'm still here.
Okay.
But I don't really have anything to add other than this is the state of affairs. We have to brace for it. We're going to be in war, and I think I feel this way every time we have a new president because I'm just wondering what war will we be involved in because that's the nature of the beast here in the United States, and that's not going to change anytime soon. We just have to look at the carnage, look at the families that it's going to impact, and brace ourselves for that because it's going to happen. In my impression, it's happening, and that's a sad state of affairs, but it's going to happen.
That's a horrible thing because we don't know what the blowback is going to be, CK. We cannot assume that we are going to win every conflict. We have not lost one since the Second World War. We didn't win Korea. We didn't win Vietnam. We've won nothing. We have been chased out of each and every one of these countries we've invaded. We've declared victory, but we have not won victory. We never achieved it. We need to stop this. And we literally cannot afford it. We don't have the money. What?
The spin.
Well, the defense contractors will find the money. They'll find the money because they're going to make so much money.
Yeah, they're going to make it, but I'm saying we don't have any money. People don't have any money.
No, true.
We don't got no money. Raytheon's got money. Boeing's got money. They've all got money. But people don't have money. And then eventually, if you don't have the sense that Henry Ford had, that is, if your workers don't have any money, eventually you ain't going to have no money.
But that is the design.
Scares me about this whole thing. It's like the entire U.S. economy is built on war. Like, we don't export anything other than like farm goods heavily subsidized by the government and weapons heavily subsidized by the government. And the problem is that if you take that away, it threatens so many people. Like, if you want fewer weapons floating around the world, well, then that costs a lot of jobs here in America. Key districts will have like military bases or weapons factories or things like that. And shutting down the whole goal of militarizing the world would threaten millions of jobs, would threaten millions of dollars in contracts. And so this whole system is designed to keep the weapons, the guns flowing. And it's impossible to talk about this like in any sort of like short radio program. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this is at the root of everything. Like, if we don't keep up the war economy, our economy isn't really built for anything else. And so unless we build out an industrial base that can, manufacture literally anything other than guns and destruction, then we're in deep trouble. We're in deep trouble.
And we are in deep trouble. We are in deep trouble. And this is becoming so obvious because so many of our NATO allies don't want us to do this. And mm-hmm. that's like, whoa, wait a minute. You all don't want us to do this? Okay, so why are we doing this?
Right. A lot of people have made the comparison. They said that, like, after Joe Biden left Afghanistan, he damaged U.S. credibility. And so some people are saying that if Biden doesn't make a big show of the situation in Ukraine, even if Putin doesn't invade right now, Biden is still able to claim a victory. Like, even if it's not a real victory, he's able to say, I stopped Putin from invading Ukraine. regardless. And so, like, it seems to be like a credibility building exercise, despite the fact that everyone knows that Vladimir Putin isn't going to invade. The Ukrainians don't think so. The Czechs don't think so. The Germans don't think so. The French don't think so. But if Biden says Putin's about to Ukraine, look, I stopped him. Look how great I am. Well, then it'll sort of build back his credibility with the defense industrial base that, you know, sort of turned against him after keeping the Afghanistan withdrawal plans, and it'll make the hawks happy.
Santita, it's called the Jedi mind trick.
Okay.
And it only works on the weak-minded.
Right. Remember, part of preparation for war, and remember, the reason, if you've been in the military, they will tell you that you can distinguish the wars that were won based on whether or not there was a declaration. Everything else is called a police action. And so this policing that creates a proxy war to stimulate the American economy is the way that presidents who find themselves politically vulnerable try to get some credibility. That's the Bryce's last point. We saw it with Bush 41, with the first Gulf War. The economy was in tough straits. There was an opportunity to make Saddam Hussein the villain, and so they go in. The problem was the war, quote unquote, didn't last long enough to get the kind of economic impact, and so he still had the economy he had to deal with, which made it challenging for him against Bill Clinton that fall. And so we got to look at what the numbers are. If you follow Raytheon's profitability, it is up 300-400% in the months leading up to this discussion. So part of this is anticipating not only what's happening in terms of the economic response that we do see, what's happening with the bottom lines of the corporations that will benefit that we often don't see, and pay attention to who's investing in them, because there's a lot of this inside dealing that we often don't pay enough attention to amongst those who have the responsibility for authorizing war, authorizing budgets for military action at the president's request. There's a lot of inside movement that we probably should pay attention to, because the other part is the war that's way over there doesn't really mean we have to deal with the effects of war over here. We don't see the images. We don't feel the effects. And so if it's happening in someone else's yard, then we get to pretend that everybody's yard looks like ours, which in our imagination is green. The problem is we sprayed it green. We didn't put new seed down.
We sprayed it green, but we didn't put new seed down. Reverend Hall, you still there?
Yes, I am, Santita. First of all, thank you for, as always, making space. I think that one of the biggest things that, Santita, that really concerns me is, again, the families and the friends and those who are losing those that they love because of war that are here in this country. There is a how do I say it, a dark cloud that comes with war. And there are generations of war, there's generations of young people and just families that have never healed as a result of war. And one of the things that we must consider is that once you push that button and when you hang up that phone and you give the command, you are opening a different type of portal. And I think over the years, there are those who are just sick and tired of seeing their families destroyed because of war that they have nothing to do with. And I just really hope, and I think CK mentioned this, that, and I know you mentioned it, that we don't know the outcome. I mean, we have the most weapons, we have the biggest and the baddest military, but that doesn't mean that Goliath won't fall. And, you know, how, and Dr. King even...
And Dr. King said that. Didn't he say that?
Yeah,
He said that. He said,
well,
he said some nation, some little nation, and you won't even know their name. You got to be careful who you continue to mess with. The people strike back. They get you.
Exactly. And that we don't know what that strike will look like. We don't know where that strike will come from. But what I do know is that there's only so many times you can keep destroying families before a few of those family members try to destroy us. And those family members are here in our own country. There's only so much surveillance, and there's only so many wiretaps that are possible. And there's always one or two that slip through. So I don't want to live in a situation or a country where, you know, we go downtown. You never know if you're on that train that someone in the spirit of revenge and justice takes out a train or two or three because we took out their family member, their mother, their father, their sister, or their brother. And so Dr. King also reminded us that America will be humble to that of a third world country. And one of the things that COVID showed and exposed to the world is those pockets of poverty that are in our country and was on the grand stage in the midst of this pandemic. And so it's just so much that comes with war, but I just want peace. And I just hope that our country chooses that option, especially in the presence of Russia, so that we don't have to live in the paranoia of who will pay us back for the debt of destroying innocent lives.
While China is not spending money on their military like this, they're building not only internally, they're going and building around the world and building relationships. If you go to Africa, if you've gone over the last 30 or 40 years, and CK, you've worked over there, they have been investing. Now, some people are saying they're recolonizing. Okay, I got you. But America missed a real big window of opportunity to do a reset on relationships in Africa, the richest, biggest continent on earth. You guys, we're 4.5% of the world's population. 95.5% of the world lives beyond our borders. Folks, Bollywood in India and Nollywood in Nigeria, they dwarf American Hollywood. They look at us and just smile and laugh. They release movies every week, and they have super duper stars. You know, some people not even thinking about us. To some people, Tom Cruise, who is he? There's some huge superstars. You know, there are more than 1 billion East Indians. And that's, when I talk about Pakistan, when I talk about anything else, we're just saying in India. They have their own superstars. They have their own stuff, everybody. And they have their own point of view. And we need to understand it and respect it. It's not America and the world. America is part of the world. Part, not the whole world. We are the world, we are the children. That was a lovely song, but there's a context to it. So, Bryce, would you like to say? It's a lot. But brilliant panel. And again, I thank you for making the pivot. But like I said, people were saying that he was giving us Russian talking points. And I said, no, I can't let the brother go off just like this. Not this young man. I can't let him do that. I gotta let you put a button on this thing right here, because that's not fair. Not only is it not fair, it's not right. And some of you are trolls, I get it. But many of us we're not thinking as critically as I think that we ought. And we've got to be very careful. You know, either you're for Biden or you're against him. Either you're for Trump or you're against him. No. I might as well split myself in two. I forget. My thinking at 20 is very different than my thinking today. My thinking at 30. I mean, I disagree with a lot of stuff I thought last week. What you gonna do? What am I gonna do? Split myself up and destroy one half of me? That's crazy. I mean, it's just we can't. Our thinking. We gotta do this. Pardon me. We gotta do this differently. Because what we're doing right now, Russian talking points, you don't even know what Russian talking points are. And a media that has never been on your side, that has never reported your plight accurately. And now you trust them uncritically when you have to send your loved ones overseas on a mission that you're not even clear on. Because you hate Putin, why? They're not even telling you, what was it? The United States and the Ukraine voted on what, Bryce? What?
It was a resolution that condemned Nazism. It was as simple as that. A resolution that says Nazis are bad and that we shouldn't glorify Nazis. Well, the U.S. couldn't bring themselves to vote yes. They actively voted against it. What do you make of that?
And Whoopi's off TV for 2 weeks. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're pretending. You have a media who pretends to care about white nationalism and racism and the far right, but they're actively sanitizing the far right in Ukraine. Like it's very open. If you talk to anyone in Ukraine or you talk to anyone who's reported on the ground there, they're like, yeah, I mean, there are far right people roving around like waving Nazi flags. The Azov Battalion that I mentioned, they were having a public relations event where they would train civilians how to use weapons and like how to fire a weapon, what's the proper stance. The U.S. media covered this. They covered this event and they showed all these pictures and they said, look at how great it is that the Ukrainians are preparing to fight for their country. Why aren't we fighting for them? And then they all the references to the fact that, yeah, they're being trained by literal Nazis. And around the world, the rest of the world, they covered this, right? If you look at like Czech media or Dutch media or any media around Europe who looked at this thing, they were like, yeah, there are far right people on the ground. They're running these training seminar things. But in the West or in U.S. media, that's completely ignored.
Well, wait a minute, Bryce. You mean to tell me you'd send black soldiers into that?
I'm sorry?
I'm just saying, not you. I'm saying black soldiers would be sent into that?
Yeah. Like, if we did integrate NATO integrate Ukraine into NATO, and we did joint military exercises with the Ukrainian military, then yes, you would have black soldiers training alongside actual Nazis. Like that's mind-boggling to me. And this is, of course, the country that loves freedom, that loves democracy. We make a big show because we defeated Hitler, but
look, what? It's an insult to my grandfathers who fought Hitler and Hitlerism and fascism. It's an insult. It's an insult, really.
They say that the Third Reich didn't lose the war; they just relocated. I think I mentioned last time that the U.S. reconstituted much of the Nazi intelligence apparatus after the war because the Nazis had a bunch of intelligence on the Soviet Union, and so we thought to ourselves, well, they're not hurting anybody. We could use them. Communism's the real enemy. So we started inviting Nazis over to the U.S. We started training their guys. We started, you know about like Operation Paperclip.
No. You know what I know about? I know my grandfather had to ride behind Nazi POWs or Nazis who had been repatriated to the United States when he came in from Europe. When the train pulled into Washington, he had to go to the colored car. And when he went to work in Greenville, South Carolina, he had to go work for them. So this is insulting. It's insulting.
And this was never taught to me as a kid in school or even in college. Like we don't talk about the darker aspects of U.S. history because if we actually taught those things, if the media would report on them honestly, well, then you might not have as many young men, young women so eager to sign up to join the military, so eager to be patriotic, and so excited about how great our country is.
But they're not. Wait a minute. They're not being patriotic. I mean, they are being patriotic, but I think Dr. King's a great patriot. We have to take that back. Because, everything I read about John Wayne is that he was a great patriot. He was also a great racist. Dr. King was he was a great patriot because he wanted to fight in every war. That doesn't make you a patriot. It makes you a soldier. Right. Roosevelt told us that it is patriotic to dissent. That's what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely. I guess there's a warped perception about what patriotism means. Like there's the true patriotism that includes actual love of country, love of people, that doesn't have the my country right or wrong sycophancy. And then there's the patriotism that the patriotism of racists, the flag waving monster truck driving, gun firing, America, America rah rah. It's completely divorced from any reality. It's just a sort of a cultist religion that everyone gets to pretend that they're better than the rest of the world because we have the bigger guns. I do think that version of patriotism is very common in the U.S. I don't. Maybe you wouldn't call it patriotism. Maybe
No, I
there's
don't.
a better word for it.
No, I don't.
But
No, I don't. I mean, I think we have to take that back. I think that those people who fight injustice are being patriotic. When I watched my father put on a bulletproof vest and a bulletproof coat to make America better as a presidential candidate, that was an act of patriotism. I think that when you kill Philando Castile under the shield of your badge, that is not patriotism. You're a murderer. Period. When Trayvon Martin looks suspicious to you, you're not being patriotic. No. We need to take that back. And stop letting them people abuse the term patriotism. They need to stop doing that. We need to stop them from doing that. Because they've abused it and they've lied about what a true patriot is. Patriots don't steal wages from the American people and let them starve. That's not patriotic. You're just greedy. Patriots don't want to make the country better and bigger and healthier. They don't want to just do that for themselves. They want to do it for everybody else. That's what a patriot is. When you love America, you will behave lovingly toward America and Americans. That's what I want to see. Until that, don't come to me waving the flag, because you are playing games with me, my friend. you playing games, and I'm not playing that. My grandfather was a patriot, and he had to come home and mow the lawns of people who were not even Americans, who were Nazis. How dare you talk to me about Nazis when my grandfather had to come and work for them? You what? Yeah, I'm hot about that, and I wasn't even alive then. I wasn't even a glimmer in his eye. I'm hot about that. You're playing these games with me, and then you always tell me to go back to Africa, and then I get to Africa, and they say, well, it looks like a lot happened, but you are not an African anymore. You're an African American. I claim that. I got you. I ain't mad. This is my country, and I'm gonna fight to make it right. And I'll fight you to make it right too. I'm not gonna hurt you, but we're gonna tussle. We're gonna tuggle. We're gonna tussle in the grass, and that's fine. We can do that. But when I bring people onto this show and you just want to say they have Russian talking points, I want you to prove your point. I want you to pull, because if you got Russian talking points, I want to know who you are. Why do you have them? Huh? Explain that to me. Why do you have Russian talking points? Are you talking to them? And if you're talking to them, it's not a crime. You ought to talk to everybody. I don't believe in no talk policies. I think we need to talk to everybody because that's the only way that you're going to have a chance of achieving peace. All these people who want to go to war don't have a child who goes in it. To Joe Biden's credit, he had a son who was in war. But I mean, I don't want to see anybody else do that. John Kennedy said because he saw war and because he nearly lost his life in the Second World War and lost his brother to it, they said, oh boy, all he had to do was think of his wife and children upstairs in that White House. And he said, I don't want any war. And people argue that that's what got him killed because he didn't want war. Think about that, everybody. Bryce, anybody else want to say anything else? Well, we have to be ready for things to roll.
That's a whole lot. We'll have to define patriotism at some point, because I think we throw the word around without really framing who's doing the defining and laying out the expectations. The other part is to remember that phase one of any conflict very often is the propaganda, the framing of what's to be anticipated, because the messaging has a lot to do with the analysis. And so we ought to be listening critically. Why are they emphasizing certain points repeatedly? As we've seen folks from the State Department tell us every day that an invasion from Russia is imminent, right? That is the language of creating an anxiety that allows for the triggering of what is basically going to be a proxy war.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do the fighting, they're going to do the funding. So they're going to position troops as far east as they can go. But that is really to provide the ability of funneling what's necessary to create the destabilization that we've seen this country do before. When there is a region of the world that is getting too much power, and I put that in air quotes, you begin to see the creeping of destabilization be part of the American foreign policy. And so just keep your eyes out for it. But this notion of patriotism, I went into the Army not because I was feeling patriotic, I was broke. And I needed money to go to school, and they had the GI Bill. And they had all of those things that couldn't be provided at the time because that was the mid-'80s in the height of the Reagan Revolution. And there are a lot of folks who are on the rolls of the U.S. military across the country who are just trying to make sure that they can take care of their families in a way that doesn't require them to compromise their dignity. And they thought that putting on the uniform would be a way to do that. So this notion about rah-rah, let me go fight for the country, you don't need to keep the volunteer roles of the military intact. The draft is still in place. Every time I fill out a government application to this day, because of when I was born, they want to know, have I signed up for the selective service?
Absolutely. You had to do it at 18. You had to do it at 18.
I had to do it at 18,
Absolutely.
and I have to confirm it at 55.
Okay.
They still want to know, did I register for the selective service at this stage in my life? Why? Because the military will go with voluntary supply, ideally, but they will force the supply if it becomes necessary.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, patriotism may not necessarily be a mindset or an attitude. It may become an obligation depending on who's defining it.
'Tis the point. But I think that we need to have a deeper discussion, you're right, about patriotism. And, because Dr. King, I don't even know if people would call him a patriot today, but he was the ultimate patriot. But you would call J. Edgar Hoover a patriot who committed atrocities against Americans, moral atrocities. He was as anti-American, anti-democratic, anti-republic as he could be. He had one of the biggest buildings in Washington, D.C., that's crumbling as we speak, is named after him. He's a patriot. You better get this untwisted. Otherwise, we're going to be in a lot of trouble, Think about that. Russian talking points. Are you serious? Where are you getting your, how do you know they're Russian talking points? And if he has them, who are you? That's what I want to know. You see, I don't know about Russian talking points. I don't know what they are. Only people who affiliate themselves with Russia know Russian talking points, but it should not be a crime to talk to Russia. Our president talked to President Putin, and he should. Tony Blinken is talking to Lavrov, and he should. Shutting the door and shutting down discussion is dangerous for everybody. All I'm saying is give peace a chance. I love you, everybody. Woo, and happy Valentine's Day. On Love Day, give peace a chance. Give love a chance. How about that? Give it a chance.
Amen.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Bryce?
No, I just said amen.
Oh, come on. All I'm saying. And they chased him to death, too. John Lennon. Everybody's talking about peace and love as a problem. Have we not learned anything since Jesus? I mean, peace and love get you killed, get you shot. But if you talk about war, you're going to get a medal. Come on, y'all. We haven't learned anything? Anybody else want to say anything before we go? I know I've said that several times, but I really have to go.
I don't want to get it to brew again. Your one caller, put a pin here. Your one caller, when we talk about second and third world countries that want the autonomy to be able to defend themselves using the same kinds of tools that the entitled countries do, you often see this fight about, I want you to abide by the rules as I impose them. And so that's where the U.S. and Russia have a common interest. I'm not so sure that as a backstory in this, that when you see this competition for dominance, that dominance is usually around three, look at those who have absolute veto power at the United Nations. That's where your dominance comes from. And so you got to look for what's the deal? Is this really what we're seeing, or is there something else going on here? And we always have to come with an eye of, trust but verify. A certain amount of suspicion is required to make sure our analysis is complete. And let's see what's really here. I'm not buying most of what I'm hearing on either end. There's a strategic interest on both sides. The question is there an opportunity to get to some middle ground to avoid the appearance of a conflict that at the end of the day has Ukraine stuck right in the middle? And I believe that that's where there is this sense that there's some expendability. How much remains to be seen, but when we've seen this kind of conflict building, they are running the calculation on how much damage can be endured before you lose the public support for what appears to be a trumped-up, not to be the pun on the former president, but a trumped-up conflict in Eastern Europe.
We just don't need it. We have our own problems right now. My goodness. We need health care. We need public schools to really get all that they need so that our children can get all that they need. I mean, we have some real needs. And we told NATO, and we agreed, Russia and NATO agreed, no eastward expansion, and they have done everything. They have just broken every agreement. You can't do that. You can't do that and be called honorable. You just can't do that. You can't. Gotta stop. Gotta stop. And you gotta decide, that you went to the military because you had no place else to go. Why can't we have an alternative for peace? Why can't you have a construct that goes around the world waging peace? Why can't we do that too? Oh, okay. I get it. Think about it, everybody. Think about it. Think about it. I love you guys. You all have been wonderful today. And, we're going to get to price fixing in football because I think that is the big piece that no one is talking about. That's a biggie.
It's going to be interesting.
That's a biggie.
I can't wait to see the numbers from the Super Bowl. How much money did they make on yesterday?
Oh, my gosh. They made some money. They made some money. But, I want to know about the price fixing. I want. Ooh, but read that 58-page complaint. Because I promise you.
I have. I've printed it out. I've looked at it.
It reads like a novel. I said, you know what? This is good stuff. This should just be a book.
I just need them to survive the motion to dismiss and get to discuss.
Oh, of
That's
course.
when the fun begins.
Well, that'll be the fun. But we already know this is a billionaire's game. We know what they're doing. But I tell you what, we had better watch out. Because he might not win this round. Remember, Kurt Flood didn't win his round, but ultimately the battle was won. So I hope Brian will go to a black school and do what Neon Dion is doing, and I hope that they make MEAC and all of our black leagues. I hope they make them strong and huge and keep on going. Build your own thing. How about that?
I want to see if Robert Smith is going to get a real shot at buying the Denver Broncos.
Well, he said he doesn't want to be bothered with it. I know they're begging him to do it. He was like, "Look, I want to fight voter suppression." He said, "I don't want to be bothered. That's a headache I don't need." He has said that. So we'll see. Byron Allen is actively seeking a franchise.
Byron is looking at it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the person who could cut the check, everybody knows right now, is Robert Smith, and he has expressed no interest. And he could be convinced. I don't know, but everybody doesn't want one of these franchises because there's a lot that goes into it, So there it is. But I love you all, and I love everybody who all has stayed here with us because we've had a great time today. Hey, Effie, happy Valentine's Day. Happy Galentine's Day, girl. And Facebook user, sending much love. That's right. If I need a peace construct, Dave Dowling, you were with me early this morning. Robert Williams, how you doing? 50,000 for the most expensive tickets, and guess what? The most expensive tickets at the Super Bowl, you cannot even afford. There is no price on them because the owners' boxes and all of that. Please, it's it is its own thing. It's big business. It's big business. It is big business, and it is what it is. But we just want it to be fair business. How about that? Come up with something new. I love you, everybody. Love you, Bryce, Reverend Hall, CK had to leave, Reverend Todd Yeary, because you've been with me all morning, Reverend Yeary. Thank you so much for that. Blessings to you, and thank you, Devin, for a great show. Oh, boy, we've had a day. Thank you so much. Love you, everybody. God bless.
Hey, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.